So earlier this week, a background update for 8.0 and the pre-patch was available for preloading on the Battle.net launcher, and this means we'll probably be getting the pre-patch, the battles of Teldrassil and Lordaeron, and all that very, very soon. Because of this, I think this is a good spot to restate and add on to my initial Battle for Azeroth theory when it was announced last November at Blizzcon. For those who didn't watch the first video, I basically stated that I believe the old gods, maybe all, maybe one, maybe some, maybe two, maybe three, I don't know, will have a heavy influence on events throughout BFA like they did in Cataclysm, and towards the end of the expansion they will burst from their prison and will be the main bad of either a final patch or the next expansion, perhaps both. That's the gist of the theory, and this video will be going over data mined and beta information to further cement it, so if you don't want any spoilers for the pre-patch or Battle for Azeroth, I suggest you stop watching now. But for those who do, we'll begin. To start this, we should really go back to the beginning of Legion, more specifically the Emerald Nightmare raid in Val-Shara. In this raid, we fight Il'gynoth, a construct or a figment or a manifest of the old gods, since it was them that created the nightmare in the first place, and the Emerald Nightmare basically is an infection of the Emerald Dream. From Il'gynoth we get a few whispers about the old gods and the future, potential future, after the Legion's defeat. Now I could go over every whisper, but there is only a few I have interest in because it relates the most to what the theory is. The first to really start this off is when he states, "Your coming was foretold in the rings. The long circle is nearly complete." This circle he talks about, I believe, is a cycle. This cycle, I believe, represents the time in between the Black Empire and the Old Gods' inevitable complete awakening to bring it about again. So if the circle is nearing its completion, the awakening is upon us. Soon. The second is when he says, "Surface blazes bright, masking shadows below." This has been pointed at Zera a lot, but I don't really agree with that. This whisper, I believe, is a reference to the impending war between the Alliance and Horde, and how all the conflict on the surface will make everyone ignorant to, as Xalatoth states, the true war which is just below the surface. It reminds me much of how Cataclysm went. You could also say that the whisper is talking about Teldrassil, home of the Night Elves, and how it gets torched. We're led to believe it's the Horde that burn it, but it could just as easily be the minions of the old gods, their Twilight's Hammer, who had a significant influence around Silithus around the time the sword fell. We've seen this many times before, where they've donned the armor of the Horde and attacked the Alliance envoys in Theramore, ruining any chance of peace between the two. I believe that was in a comic somewhere, I don't exactly remember where, I think it was in an old one. Pre-Wrath, post-Burning Crusade, somewhere around there. Plus, the way Sylvanas' dialogue from the pre-patch suggests, the Horde's intention is to take over Teldrassil, use it as a port for Azerite instead of just burning it. That, and we still have no solid evidence the Horde burning it, of the Horde burning it, besides the he said, she said stuff. So what do the old gods gain by burning it? Well, they spark a total ignorance from the Alliance, who believe the Horde burned Teldrassil. They set their full might on the Horde with the intention of dismantling it, like Jaina once said, leaving anything the old gods do unaccounted for. Another thing to note is another Il'gynoth whisper. He states, "Her heart is a crater, and we have filled it." This, I believe, is a reference to the Heart of Azeroth, the item we'll be using to save Azeroth in Battle for Azeroth. We'll be using it to absorb its blood, the so-called Azerite, as it is called. However, what if this blood isn't the blood of Azeroth, but the blood of an old god, namely Cthulhu? We do know that Azerite has an ominous effects to the mind, as shown in the epilogue cinematics, and we also know Cthulhu is imprisoned under Anchorage and Silithus, the very place the sword struck. It could be that Cthulhu perhaps was damaged by the sword, maybe he's even dying, and taking Azeroth with him, for we do know that killing an old god would prove fatal to the whole world, as proved by Y'Shaarj when he was yanked by the Titans from Azeroth, and it almost killed the entire world. So, the ploy of the old gods is to use Magni and the champions of Azeroth to fill the heart and use it to empower the planet and themselves. We know that Magni can speak to Azeroth, but what if he isn't exactly speaking to the planet, you know, the Titan spirit inside, but to those around her? He's a direct connection to the greatest champions the universe has ever known, the only ones that could perhaps best anything, including the Void, and thus the Old Gods. And they could potentially be the indirect pocket of the Void. They could be the ones that set the awakening of the Black Empire in motion. It goes along with Il'gynoth's whisper, the King of Diamonds has been made a pawn. There are also some other notes I want to bring up here. Illyria, a user of the Void, is confirmed to be hearing the whispers of the power she uses in the Reunion comic. This could potentially be a main figure in the awakening of the old gods, so simply so that by her dialogue in the Valley of Heroes and the Whisper of Il'gynoth. Illyria states in the Valley of Heroes that she felt like she's already died twice, and Il'gynoth's Whisper states that at the hour of her third death, she ushers in our coming. I talked more about this in the reunion discussion video I did, so you can look at that if you really want a complete picture of what I'm talking about with Illyria, but there's also a large amount of Old God / Void themed stuff we've seen on the alpha and beta of Battle for Azeroth. Gahun is a potential experiment or something about an old god. There's literal music in Stormsong that relates heavily with them. I even believe the words old god is in the name of it. There's some weird Drustvar graveyard where there's more weird whispers along the lines of like Cthuns, or perhaps maybe it's even N'Zoth. And finally, a guildie of mine shared an image with me a while back and took the available maps of where each old god was imprisoned and compared it to a map of Azeroth going in the Battle for Azeroth with Kulturas and Zandalar on the map. And the prison of N'Zoth, the only old god yet featured, is right smack dab in between Kulturas and Zandalar. Coincidence? I think not. This makes me believe Ny'alotha, the sleeping city, is actually N'Zoth's prison, and we have to go under the depths of the ocean to find it, or perhaps it will rise up between the two, kicking off the next expansion, or maybe even a final patch. But only time will tell. If you have anything to add to this theory, or maybe you disagree and really want to let me know, please do. Let me know in the comments below, and I'll be sure to read them, and I'll comment and do whatever. And also, just remember, #OldGodsDidTeldrassil. Get that trending on Twitter. Thanks for watching.